Monica, can you hear us?
Yes.
Thank you.
Welcome to this evening's Committee of Adjustment meeting. Members of the public, applicants, agents, and staff may be participating this evening either in person or virtually via Zoom. For those attending via Zoom, please note that it is our standard practice for members of the public to have their cameras off and microphones muted until it is time for that member to speak. Township staff can assist with muting microphones. If you require assistance, please use the chat function and ask staff. I am also pleased to advise that this is being broadcast live to the township's YouTube channel, where a recording of this meeting will be available. Note that the township does not have the ability to edit the live stream or recorded versions of the meeting. Public meetings have been called and notice circulated in accordance with the Planning Act with respect to applications for minor variance and/or consent. The purpose of public meetings are to inform and provide the public an opportunity to ask questions and express views with respect to applications. The format of the public meeting is as follows. Township staff will explain the purpose of the application and report all correspondence received. Next, the applicant will present any further relevant information. Next, the public will be permitted to ask questions and express views on the proposal, and then the public portion of the meeting will be closed. And next, committee members will be given the opportunity to ask questions for clarification of the application. After all comments have been received, the committee will consider the application with due regard to the presentations and views expressed this evening. The committee will then do one of three things: approve the application, deny the application, or defer the application pending receipt of additional information. Specified persons who have provided oral submissions or written objections but disagree with the committee's decision on an application may appeal the decision to the Ontario Land Tribunal as entitled under the Planning Act. The deadline for appeal of consent applications is 20 days within the giving of notice, and for minor variances within 20 days of the decision date. When commenting on an application, please first give your full name and address. For the minutes, please note that the names and addresses of those individuals who speak at this meeting will appear within the meeting minutes, which are public documents. If you wish to receive a copy of a decision, please leave your name and address with the township staff. Disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. If we can get a motion for the adoption of the minutes. Motion COA 2024 051, moved by member Hawkins, seconded by member Vandergeest, that the minutes of the August 20th, 2024 Committee of Adjustment meeting be adopted as printed and distributed. We are carried. Adjourned applications. So would township staff briefly introduce the application and report on any written response to the notice circulated for application for minor variance A15-24?
Thank you, Chair. So the first application this evening is, as noted, minor variance A15-24 for the lands known municipally as 1735 Sweep Road. This is a key map of the subject lands showing their approximate location being about 1 kilometer downstream of Severn Falls. They have an approximate area of about half a hectare, which is about 1.25 acres, and a frontage of approximately 60 meters or nearly 200 feet along the Severn River. The 2023 County of Simcoe aerial imagery is shown on the screen here. It does show the subject lands outlined in red and describes the surrounding shoreline residential development. The lands are located in a predominantly low-density shoreline residential area of the township. These types of properties are characteristically known as being serviced by private services, being a well and septic, and access via a private road, and focused heavily on their connection to the shoreline and the water resources for recreational uses. These types of properties are common across the northern range of the township, which was and is still referred to as cottage country, Historically, these properties developed with modest seasonal cottages used through the late spring to early fall seasons for recreational purposes. As time has gone on, these properties have experienced development pressures to accommodate permanent dwellings capable of accommodating year-round recreational and residential uses. The subject property is an example of these development pressures, as that is what is proposed before this application before the committee. The property owners are proposing to demolish the existing dwelling and construct a new one on the property. Through this application, the applicants are requesting a reduced front yard setback to the new dwelling, as well as an attached deck. The public hearing for this application was held at the July 16th, 2024 Committee of Adjustment meeting, where it was deferred by the committee pending a peer review of the EIS, which was submitted in support of the application. There's been no changes to the application since the July meeting, where the public meeting was held, and therefore notice was not required to be recirculated for tonight's meeting. The EIS was peer reviewed by the township's consulting ecologist, which did identify concerns, which I will get into throughout this presentation. And to recap for the benefit of committee and members of the public, the requested reduced front yard setback is 8.66 meters to the reconstructed and expanded / enlarged dwelling and 6.24 meters to an attached deck. The bylaw normally requires 20-meter setback to the dwelling and normally 20 meters to a deck, but depending on its height, it might be permitted to slightly encroach into that front yard. These next few slides and site plans depict the existing and proposed development on the subject lands. They do demonstrate that there would be a substantial increase to the extent of development and utilization of the lands within 30 meters of the shoreline. This first plan here shows the existing development site plan, and this is just a zoom in of the developed area. You can see on this slide here the existing dwelling with an attached deck, as well as the septic system to the rear of the dwelling. This thick black line here is a 30-meter setback to the shoreline, and this dashed line is the 20-meter. There is also an existing dock located in the front corner of the property. This is the proposed development site plan. Again, just a zoom in of the proposed developed areas. You can see the proposed reconstructed part of the dwelling, which is new, along with the addition or enlargement of that existing footprint area to the rear here. The applicant has demonstrated here in pink the area that would be expanded within the 20-meter setback. The blue area here is a proposed landscape restoration area, along with a dock and boathouse on the shoreline, as well as a new septic system to the rear. These plans do quantify the existing and proposed development / amenity areas on site, together with that landscaped restoration area. The plans do demonstrate that there would be no net improvement to the vegetation protection zone on site, and that it would actually result in a net increase of disturbed areas and hardened surfaces on site. It also appears that the existing development / amenity areas have been overstated, which suggests that an even greater net increase of disturbed areas within 30 meters of the shoreline would occur. The next few slides are site photos from staff site inspection. The first two here demonstrate the proximity of the existing development to the shoreline. This is taken sort of standing where the existing dock is, looking back towards the dwelling, looking at sort of what the front yard is. These next two photos are, this photo here is looking down the side of the dwelling from the shoreline back towards the rear. This photo here is looking, if you were sort of up in this area of this photo, looking down towards the dwelling. This is the area of the existing septic system servicing the existing dwelling, which is proposed to be removed, with the new dwelling located in this area. Lastly, these two photos here, this is taken sort of from the side of the existing dwelling, looking towards the neighbor towards the north. And this is taken from the back of that septic field, which was in the last slide, looking back towards the rear of the property. These photos demonstrate what staff consider to be an opportunity to relocate the proposed development further back from the shoreline. There were no obvious obstacles or topographical concerns, which would limit the ability of that dwelling from being set back further from the shoreline. Just to summarize the applicable policies, as was discussed within the staff report, the applicable planning policy documents do permit the proposed resource-based recreational dwelling use on the subject lands. However, those policy documents also establish environmental protections and prioritize the protection of the environment over the land use. These policy documents, especially the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe, do require naturalized shoreline buffers to be implemented to the maximum extent possible, generally a 30-meter VPZ in width. There is some flexibility within those policies to allow for a decreased or a reduced shoreline buffer width, where it is demonstrated that it is not possible to achieve that 30-meter width. As discussed earlier, the applicants are proposing a net increase to the disturbed areas on site as quantified through their site plans, and the peer review of the EIS also concluded that that report did not provide justification on why the 30-meter VPZ could not be met on this property. Historically, the justifications have included rock outcroppings, watercourses, irregular or constrained lot fabrics, etc. In the case of this development, there was no rationale or justification presented demonstrating the need for a reduced VPZ width. The EIS that was submitted recommended a number of mitigation measures to reduce the impacts of the proposed dwelling and the development due to its proximity to the shoreline. However, it didn't demonstrate that there was not the ability to achieve that full 30-meter VPZ width on the property. This justification was also not presented through the planning justification report submitted with the application. Township staff did complete a site inspection of the subject lands, and as we discussed with the site photos, there was no obvious topographical or other obstacles on site that would prevent the development from being set back further from the shoreline. The intent of the applicable policies is that where new development is proposed, it should be sited appropriately on site. In cases where the existing buildings are to be demolished and new ones constructed, the policies aim to see an overall net improvement to the natural environment and the ecological functions and linkages of the shoreline areas. For these reasons, township staff are of the opinion that the application is not consistent with the PPS, does not conform to the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe, and does not meet the 4 tests as required by the Act. Township staff do acknowledge the approach that was taken by the applicant's planning consultant in considering the applicable policies and how they may relate to an enlargement or an expansion of an existing dwelling. Staff understand that while the proposal may generally comply with the requirements of the zoning bylaw, should it have been proposed as an expansion, but that is not what is proposed through this application. A new larger dwelling is contemplated, and as such, the policies are clear in their intent that new development is to be set back further from the shoreline to bring properties and development into compliance with today's requirements and standards. There were no comments or objections received from the clerk's office, the building division, the public works, or fire and emergency services department. And for those reasons, planning staff do recommend that the application be denied for the reasons as outlined in the staff report. I will advise the chair this evening that this is not a public meeting, so normally the applicants or their agent may not have an opportunity to address the committee. However, they are in attendance, and I do understand that they wish to speak with you this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. So we are not subject to a public meeting, but I will allow the applicant or their agent to make some further comments if they would like.
that on there? All right, so thank you. So good evening, Chair, members of the committee. My name is Melissa Markham, Planning and Associates, 1025 Rebecca Lane, Huntsville, Ontario, P1H2J6. As you may recall, I attended the committee meeting on July 16th, where the application was first heard. At the July 16th meeting, staff recommended that the application be deferred pending peer review of the submitted scoped environmental impact study. And at that meeting, the committee passed a resolution to defer making the decision pending peer review of the submitted report. At this time, a peer review of the scoped environmental study has occurred. Following the July 16th meeting, a scope of work was received from the township's peer reviewer, and a meeting was held on July 30th to discuss next steps to be able to bring this application before the committee. The owners agreed with the peer review costs, and the peer review was conducted, and comments were provided to us on September 4th. A meeting was arranged between both ecologists on September 11th, and additional information was requested and provided to the township as a result of the meeting. The township asked us at this time if we wanted the application to be rescheduled for tonight's meeting, and if so, a response to the comments was needed to be provided by September the 12th. At that time, we did request for this to be rescheduled, and the response.
Excuse me. So the microphone isn't working. Can we maybe just get you to sit at the far desk?
Okay, so I'm not sure where the microphone cut off, but the owners did purchase the property in August of 2023, and the bylaw does permit a development setback of 20 meters. So if the building was being replaced at 20 meters, it would be able to be constructed. The dwelling is adjacent to their family, and they wanted to be in this location for that reason. Through preliminary design stages, the owners sought to repair the existing dwelling as the floors are sagging and the energy efficiency of the existing dwelling is in need of repairs. When the owners decided to proceed for a one-for-one replacement of the existing dwelling, they were made aware of that time that they needed to maintain 50% of the exterior of the structure. The owners were also aware of similar approvals in this area to allow for less than 50% of the structure to be maintained. As the existing dwelling is located on bedrock, there is little to no foundation under the cottage to maintain. Similar minor variance applications have been approved by the committee for redevelopment of existing dwellings with a reduced setback. One of these is located at 1708 Green Lane, which is about 3 properties south of the subject properties. This was where only a foundation was being retained. The application had no requirement for a scoped environmental report or a peer review of the shoreline planting plan to enhance the shoreline buffer. And that application was heard by the committee on March 19th of 2024. There's no review of the existing versus additional development within the 30-meter vegetation protection zone. While decisions are not precedent setting, I wanted to provide the steps that these owners have taken to achieve the same redevelopment goals. In this instance, the township is viewing these lands as vacant with a new build. While it's not accurate, as the existing lands have development rights and are permitted to be reconstructed and have additions made as of right by the bylaw. The owners have an existing dwelling which is in need of repair and have requested to maintain the existing setback no closer to the water. If they were reconstructing this at 20 or 30 meters, we would not be here or in front of council with the township. The lot is irregular, and the proposed location would have the least amount of site alteration with the proposed construction. The owners have designed a dwelling that would comply with the bylaw other than the replacement of the existing dwelling, which is essentially the relief that's being sought from this committee, to allow for the reconstruction of the dwelling more than 50%. There are no restrictions in the bylaw for development beyond 20 meters. The township setback on these lands is 20 meters, not 30. There are existing development rights. I attended the pre-consultation meeting with the township, and at that time they provided justification related to the growth plan regarding the required vegetation protection zone. Township staff did not require an EIS to be submitted. However, the owners retained a qualified ecologist with over 30 years of experience to provide their opinion on the development. It included mitigation measures which could be included in a development agreement, which would require additional shoreline protection plan to restore vegetation in the shoreline area. The owners are aware that this is a requirement for the approval. They've moved forward with a peer review of the scoped EIS as well at their expense, as per the deferral of the committee. I'd also like to provide changes to the provincial policy. While not in effect at this time, we'll update the provincial policy statement and replace the growth plan in effect as of October 20th, 2024, in the 30-meter vegetation protection zone, which is the main concern as identified in staff's report, are the only policies from the growth plan that are included in their staff report, will no longer be in effect. This being said, it's still my opinion that the current application is appropriate and reflects applications on similar lands in this area. The existing dwelling, as I stated, can be reconstructed up to 50% exterior with a proposed addition to the rear with no planning approvals. The development agreement that would be required through the approval of this application would be required, and it's a net gain over the existing situation with just a building permit. It's my professional opinion that the application meets the 4 tests. When considering whether the application is minor, consideration has been given to any anticipated impacts and the relief required. As you have heard, none of the surrounding neighbors have provided any comments in opposition to the application. The application will permit the reconstruction of the dwelling that is in a state of disrepair. The reconstruction will utilize the footprint of an existing legal non-complying dwelling, and the addition will be solely to the rear of the dwelling, maintaining the current front yard setback. The proposed reconstruction is a 1-story building within the 20-meter setback, and it's 2 stories beyond the 20-meter setback. The existing front yard setback is in keeping with the surrounding properties. As I provided in the report, the setback's taken at a closest point to the cottage, which you saw in the site plans here today, as the building is located at about a 45-degree angle to the lake. Only a portion of the dwelling is at this setback. The size, height, and location of the dwelling would be permitted with a 50% replacement. There are not anticipated to be any impacts on surrounding properties as side yard setbacks are being maintained. Once again, to move the property even further back, there is a pinch point on the property in the bow tie shape of the property, the subject lands, which would impact some of the side yard setbacks. The proposed front yard setback is consistent with the scale and setbacks of the surrounding property. A development agreement as provided would be undertaken as a condition of approval to ensure the recommendations of the scoped EIS would be implemented to restore and enhance the shoreline. The visual impact from the Severn River is anticipated to be minimal, as the proposed development has been located in the same footprint, having a similar height as the existing dwelling. The submitted report further provided with the implementation of the proposed mitigation measures, no negative impacts are anticipated. The setback to the cottage is consistent with surrounding properties. The existing development's located on bedrock, and with any increase in setback, no vegetation could be planted in this area. The application proposes to maintain the existing setbacks. The redevelopment of the property will be an improvement over the existing conditions. The proposed new dwelling and attached deck will be structurally sound and will have an updated design. The requirements of the plantings in the shoreline area are also a net improvement over retaining 50% of the dwelling, where no agreements or additional mitigation measures would be required. The setbacks consistent with surrounding properties, and the recommendation of the EIS would require erosion and sediment controls, runoff mitigation, and would incorporate 6 trees and 20 native plants located in the shoreline area. The plantings will buffer the view of the dwelling and deck from the water and will improve the shoreline's ecological health. With the redevelopment, a septic, as you saw in the plans, is also going to be replaced, having a greater setback from the river. The approval of the application would require the implementation of a revegetation plan. The proposed changes, as you saw in the sketch earlier, within the 20-meter setback is approximately 28 square meters of development, with an increase in 121 square meters of landscape restoration. This is within the first 20 meters of the shoreline. The discussion between the ecologists was that restoration within the shoreline buffer could have more of an environmental impact than beyond the 20 meters, where it's proposed to be located is within the first 20 meters. There's a net gain in this area through the plantings. While there's an increase in development within the 20 to 30 meters, the bylaw permits a 20-meter setback. Development could be located at the setback with no planning relief required, or development agreement, or additional plantings. Both of the ecologists agreed that the property was relatively clear in the area shown on the drawings submitted, and other than the addition towards the rear, more of the west of the subject lands, all other setbacks are being maintained. The intent of the front yard setback is to ensure development is set back to maintain the character of the area, visual impact is minimized, and vegetation is preserved. The intent of the non-complying provisions is to provide for the continued use, expansion, enlargement, and additions to legal non-complying dwellings. The bylaw provides provisions for legal non-complying buildings to limit expansions and maintain the character. The implementation of the mitigation measures in the scoped EIS would protect and enhance the ecological health of the shoreline. The development is in line with the existing front yard setback, which is in keeping with the setback of surrounding properties. The development, once again, has been designed to comply with the zoning bylaw provisions. The difference is that not 50% of the exterior is being maintained. The intent of the shoreline residential designation in the official plan is to maintain existing character, protect natural features and functions of the shoreline area, and ensure development is appropriately serviced. The character of the area will be maintained through the redevelopment of this dwelling. The application was submitted with a letter from a septic installer that provided the lands could be serviced, and the submitted scoped EIS provides the features and functions of the shoreline will be protected. This was not questioned by the peer reviewer or their comments. Through the implementation of the mitigation measures in the scoped report and a development agreement, the ecological health of the shoreline will be enhanced and protected. To provide a response to the staff report, I offer that the application is consistent with the PPS, and there are no comments from the peer reviewer that maintaining the existing setback will interrupt any linkages or functions of the shoreline area. Further, the growth plan policies as I provided will no longer be in effect on October 20th. However, the submitted EIS and peer review provides the development will restore to the maximum extent possible the ecological features and functions of the shoreline. Staff provide county policies regarding rural character and maintenance, protection and restoration of natural heritage features and functions, which is proposed through the application. We are not aware of any comments from the county regarding this application. Further, the development conforms to the township official plan to maintain character, protect natural features and functions of the shoreline and the immediate shoreline, which is the area that's proposed to be revegetated, and the development permitted beyond the 20-meter setback of the bylaw. It's also demonstrated that the development can be serviced. The bylaw permits redevelopment up to 50% with additions, and the application proposes the existing provisions within the bylaw. However, requests to replace more than 50% of the dwelling that is in need of repairs. The owners and I read the staff report and requesting that committee approve the application as presented. As provided, staff did not require the scoped EIS, and the owners submitted the application to proceed with the development in September. The application was deferred to require a peer review of the submitted scoped environmental impact study, which has now been completed. This approval would allow for the owners to proceed with the detailed information required for a development agreement, including a vegetation plan and grading plan. This approval that we're asking for here tonight is only the first step in the final approval of this development. The owners are aware, as I mentioned, none of their neighbors have any objections to the application. And I'm here tonight along with the owner's builder and the owners requesting the application be referred, and the reasons for the deferral have been completed. So thank you for allowing us to speak here tonight. I do know that the builder is also here, and he would like to provide just a couple of comments with regards to the application too. I believe he's online if Jim is there.
If you would like to make a few comments, Jim, you're more than welcome to. You're on mute.
Sorry, good evening, everyone. You can hear me okay now?
Yes.
Perfect. My name is Jim Broman, Mazenga Building Group North, 3859 Highway 118 West, Township of Muskoka Lakes. I'd like to thank Melissa for well-presented facts and history of this application. I've been doing this for about 12 or 13 years up here, just specifically in this region. We've completed over 50 projects in the area. We employ over 50 people and hundreds of sub-trades and skilled labor up here. Sustainable and performance and durability. We want to focus on this, and part of the reason of why we're requesting to remove more than 50% of this current existing building is we want to meet that SB 12 A1 sustainability and performance. The buildings that we're building today are Ferraris. They need to perform, and they actually are better than a seasonal declaration, and where you can cut corners and just not put in the right R values and systems and heating and cooling and glazing that would actually allow this to perform and be less of an impact. On that note, as Melissa noted, the shape of the building or the lot lines on the sides of the bow tie, pushing this back further into that bow tie actually takes out a lot more call it excavation, trees, pushes it closer to side yard setbacks. And it's not a very conforming lot to keep pushing it back into this. And you can actually see why they built it there originally, because of that proximity of the pinch point of the property. But all in all, the goal is to provide something that is well built, mitigate all forms of any sort of environmental impacts as best as possible, with tree protection, root protection, sediment protection of the river. We've been through this before in many other municipalities, and we've had great success. There's no expense spared in trying to protect the environment, because this is what we're here for. This is why we exist, is because of the water and the environment. So the intent here is really not egregious, and I feel that the application has satisfied many of the checkpoints here, as Melissa stated, and we're here to oblige any other further comments or questions. Thank you.
Thank you. If there's no further comments or questions, you can make some brief comments, sure.
My name is David Durdan. Mailing address is 5709 Jessica Court, Rolling Meadows, Illinois. With my wife, we are the property owners here. I've been coming to the Toronto cottage country for the last 50 years, first to my dad's uncle's cottage on Lake Joe, then to my uncle's, my dad's brother's cottage on Lake Rosso, and finally to my brother's cottage, which is actually at 1745 Sweet Road for the past 10 years. So when the property became available next door, we'd been actively looking for a cottage. We were set the parameters, one lock up or one lock down, so that we could be close for the extended families. And when the property next door became available, we jumped on it and wanted to take advantage of it. We would like to expand the existing property into a four-season cottage. Yes, as the staff see, there is increased development. Sweet Road is a four-season road. It's always, or at least for the past 10 years, has been a four-season road. So, and doing that with the bylaw requirement of retaining 50% of the existing dwellings is very difficult to do efficiently and effectively, right? The floors need replacing, windows need replacing, the walls have very little insulation. Doing all that and retain 50%, I'm not sure how you calculate 50% in that case, and that's why we decided to ask for the minor variance to allow us to reconstruct in the existing footprint, follow all the other bylaw requirements with just the 25% expansion within the 20-meter line, everything else beyond 20 meters, and be prepared to do the vegetation replanting that seems to be relatively standard with development agreements for those minor variances that have been approved in the past. So that's what we're trying to do. We feel it will be a good project for the overall environment, both the environment, the local economy. Four-season property means more time spent up here, more economic development in the local economy, and consequently, it's an overall net positive impact in our minds. We also see the next generation of both my brothers and our families being encouraged by us being next door and putting in demands or suggestions for what could be added, such as the shared pizza oven that has caused comments on some of the discussions in the past. And just as one point, we did an approximation of what the new development area, old development area, undeveloped areas were. I did note that an undeveloped area in the diagram is where there is a 9 by 6 foot concrete septic tank currently that was called undeveloped, and in the calculations it's being considered, oh, we're going to develop that land, which I would say is already currently developed, to offset any sort of adjustments in other areas. So that's what I want to say. Carla, do you want to say anything else?
First of all, thank you for your time. We appreciate it. In David's words, cottage life is in our blood. And we really want to do the passing from generation to generation here. Our son is an only child, so his cousins are like brothers. And with this property right next door to them, when it came up for sale, it fulfilled our dreams of creating that consistent sense of connection and establishing the legacy for the future generations. In addition, during our retirement years, we get to sort of enjoy all that Severn has to offer. The existing cottage footprint, as you see, was thoughtfully placed along the shoreline, providing a long view of the river, which is spectacular during the summer sunset. The proximity to the water creates an immeasurable sense of peace, and we're able to enjoy the wildlife close up. That's why we're requesting this variance, to preserve that footprint. We're not asking for more. We're just saying to preserve that. We feel we've worked really hard and invested much to understand and abide by the township's bylaws and requirements. In no way are we trying to push the envelope here. As an example, on the July 30th meeting that Melissa noted, after this committee's decision to request a peer review, we met with the township and asked to understand the scope of the peer review, but also if there was anything else that they were concerned about. Was there anything else that was required so that we could do the work in parallel to prepare for this session? The only feedback we received at that time was that we would need a lot grading plan for the permit submission. Additionally, as part of the peer review, as you've heard, we've participated in meetings with both environmental consultants, again, seeking to understand and making sure that there were no issues that would cause a pause in this application. Hence, when we read the planning committee recommendation, we were surprised. There was no hint that a denial of this application on something other than the peer review findings was in play, and we immediately got in the car, drove up here yesterday, and are here in front of you today. Our request is simply to demolish the current structure. Let's get it into let's use that same footprint, utilize the beautiful footprint on the existing cottage, and construct a high quality property that harmonizes with the natural surroundings. I thank you for your time, and please, if you have any questions, that's why we're here.
Thank you. If there are no further questions or comments, I declare that the public portion of this application is closed. Do any members of the committee require further clarification or want to provide comments on this application? Member Hawkins?
To the chair, to staff, the increased deck area in the front, does that count as part of the development area, or is it just finished residential area? Just the areas of the decks look different from the existing to the proposed.
Thank you. Through the chair. I will bring up the development plan just to show the difference here. So you can see on the existing plan here, there's the dwelling footprint as well as the deck that is mostly across just the front wall of the dwelling and slightly wraps around this side. through the redevelopment plan, the deck would be extended down this side of the dwelling as well as wrap around to connect to the new area here. So that area of the deck has been included in the yellow area, which is noted as the existing development or amenity area.
Through the chair to staff, I guess one of the things being that close to the river, I live on the river, the water comes up quite a bit. I don't know through this area, but is there a flooding issue, like being that close?
Through the chair to member Bossy, there is no flood mapping available at this section of the Severn River. There is, the bylaw has some minimum opening elevations and the building would have to be above the regulatory or the regulated water's edge. It is part of the Severn River and this section here is controlled with the lock system. So, the water level is a little bit more regulated in this area, obviously, but there is no flood mapping in this area of the township.
Through the chair to staff, the owner's applicant has suggested there's going to be changes in with the growth plan moving forward this coming October. How would those changes with the removal of some of the items within the growth plan, how does that impact this application? Say if this application was before us in October, how would it be seen differently?
So through the chair to member Vandergeest, if this application was before the committee, once the growth plan was no longer in effect, there is still the PPS policies there is some updated policies coming through the PPS. So staff would obviously have to undertake an evaluation of those policies at the time. Regardless of that, staff, there's still the official plan of both the county of Simcoe and the township of Severn, which through the report staff are and have noted that we do not feel that the application conforms to the general intent and purpose of that, which is one of the 4 tests. So, even if the PPS and the growth plan were replaced with the new PPS, the application, in the opinion of staff, may still not meet the 4 tests. But if Ms. Mandeville has anything further to add to that, I would.
Thank you through the chair. Just to add on to that, I just want to note the township's new official plan as well. So although the growth plan may not be or will not be with as part of the legislative requirements come October 20th, it is the township's hope that the new official plan will be coming into effect soon after that. We don't have any dates or anything concrete at this time, but just wanted to point that out as well. So I think as our planner just stated, we would have to evaluate the application under that criteria. And because we're here tonight, we have to evaluate it under the criteria that's in place today. And the committee's decision has to be based on the policy that's in place today. If the committee were to defer this application and it comes back in November, then it would have to be evaluated under the applicable policies at that time of decision. So far, there are no transition policies, meaning that no one's being grandfathered or evaluated under this current policy come November, but the province has said they may release some of those at a later date. So it's a little bit of an unknown at this time, unfortunately. There is a PPS report on council tomorrow morning if anyone's super interested in that.
I guess thank you for that. I guess through you to the applicant, when were you looking to start construction of this dwelling if everything was approved this evening? And you're gonna have to get up and probably speak in a mic, to be honest with you.
There we go. We've been pushing forward to try and get construction started, foundation poured this winter so we could start doing interior work, or sorry, foundation poured before the winter. with the development agreement and the indicated timelines from the township for doing the development agreement, that's probably not achievable to get the foundation poured before winter. So we would plan on starting the construction and being able to be in a position to pour concrete as soon as the roads were open for the heavy loads, which is sometime April, May, depending on how severe the winter is this year. So that would be the target. That would be the assumed target now, yes.
Through the chair to staff. I guess I'm trying to figure out from the consultant's report or the peer review, what would be the single biggest issue that they have with if we approve this? Like, I'm trying to figure it out from the report.
Through the chair, the biggest sticking point with this is the justification as to why a 30-meter vegetation protection zone cannot be established on this property. Those are the requirements of the growth plan to establish that 30-meter VPZ, or to establish a VPZ to the maximum extent possible, which is established in the growth plan as 30 meters. The information that has been provided to staff to this point has not demonstrated why it's not possible to achieve that 30 meters, and why the encroachment into that 30-meter VPZ is required in order to facilitate development on the property. As staff noted through our site inspection and the pictures which were provided on site, there's no obvious topographical or any physical challenges that would prevent the dwelling from being constructed back further on the property from the shoreline to provide for that VPZ.
I guess through you, but it's not even a question. It's more of a comment. I can see both sides, right? To be honest with you, I can see both sides, and in the world that I live in a black and white world, and work in a black and white world, like with regards to regulatory requirements and everything like that. I honestly, with the uncertainty of policy changes, proposed policy changes, and the uncertainty of whether there's going to be transition plans put in place, the thought comes to my mind, I'd probably be better to defer the application this evening, waiting for some certainty to come up, because I'd prefer not to be here 3 months from now, hearing the same application under different policy requirements when we're this close to a possible policy change or a transition plan, or that. That's my thoughts. That could be swayed either way, but I can definitely see both ways, right? I can also see from an environmental standpoint, when you redevelop the site further back, now we're redeveloping the whole lot rather than portions of the lot. And when you already have established vegetation, vegetation also reduces the future potential erosion and all that type of stuff. So I can definitely see it both ways, but I think my support, instead of an approval or denial, would be more of a deferral to fully understand the changes, and then give the applicant the choice to bring it back or not before the end of the year or within 6 months. But that's my just comment and thought.
Question to staff. If the applicant hadn't submitted an EIS, would one have been requested?
Through the chair to Member Bossy. request for an EIS, or the advice on an EIS, was presented to the applicant as an option to provide some justification for the reduction in the VPZ width. That was the way it was noted in the pre-consultation minutes. There were the policies of the growth plan require that 30 meters, and you have to demonstrate why you can't meet that width through the redevelopment plan. So if the application was provided without an EIS, based on the information that has been provided to date, I feel that we would be in the same position that we are right now, with the same recommendation from staff.
Through the chair to staff, I guess moving forward with the landscape plan and the vegetation plan and all those recommendations by the EIS to be included in the development agreement. I guess when you move this entire cottage and the existing structure, you want everything moved back. Technically, that existing foundation, which is, I guess, a confirmation of where bedrock is, because you're never going to be able to revegetate that area. So if the whole structure moves back, you're really disrupting more vegetation, because you're not going to be able to rebuild. You're not going to regrow anything on the bedrock area. So with your justification, or even if it's going to a deferral and coming back for more information with your justification of why they can't move it, can part of that be of the bedrock area to take out of that square footage of area that they can't redevelop, or won't be redeveloped anyway, instead of increase, like it's just the balance of the increase or the net or the pro areas.
Through the chair, thank you for the question. If those lands were vacant over time, they would naturally sort of start to renaturalize with native species. They may not, be capable of accommodating trees, but they could be capable of accommodating smaller species or other vegetation in or around that area to sort of renaturalize that area, which is common across the shoreline areas of the township with exposed bedrock leading to the shoreline. That's not an uncommon situation in the area of Severn for shoreline development. The opportunities to relocate that dwelling further back from the shoreline, there's already a portion of that area which is existing cleared area where the existing septic system is located. The existing driveway and parking areas all are shown on the site plan as being at least 20 meters back from the shoreline. So there is some opportunities to bring this dwelling back from the shoreline, in the opinion of staff. And over time, the renaturalization of the existing developed areas could occur just with time and through a restoration landscape plan.
I have a couple of questions for staff. From the standpoint of 50% of exterior, what is that? Is it like 50% of the building is being renovated? Is that what's considered like a rebuilding or a renovation or whatever the proper term is? Like what does that 50% of the exterior mean, I guess, is what I'm asking.
To the chair, the 50% is normally looked at through the zoning review as being the foundation, exterior walls, and the roof. So in some combination of those three elements, 50% of the building would need to be retained in order to keep those existing legal non-complying rights that are established in the bylaw.
So to my understanding, basically, if you were to keep the whole foundation as was, halfway up the wall, basically cut it off, you could put a new roof on and a new top of the wall, as that would be 50% of the building.
In theory, yes.
Okay. And then just to follow up to that, there's been a lot of discussion about this being considered new construction versus an addition to the existing property. What makes that determination as to whether it's an addition versus a whole new construction?
To the chair, that would be that would come down to the 50%. So if at least 50% of the existing building was being retained, the township zoning bylaw would consider what is proposed before the committee now as an addition. If in this case, where what is proposed before the committee is the full removal of the existing dwelling and the construction of a new dwelling, it's considered new construction.
So just based on that last discussion, if this created a phased approach, so if the addition, the back portion and that pink portion, if we didn't touch the front of the building, the front existing cottage, and left it alone at its 100% capability right now, and they built an addition for this phase, how would that affect if they came back as a renovation of the front phase in it, like, because that way you wouldn't get into the EIS, would you? You wouldn't get into the environmental areas versus coming back in phase 2 doing the existing house.
Through the chair, we would have to look at building permit drawings. We can't really comment on all these hypothetical situations. And, you know, we do admire that these applicants were truthful in their plans. But certainly I think some of the experienced members on this committee could speak to the fact of what happens when people aren't truthful and then they come in halfway through a proposal and try and get permissions for something that, you know, they didn't ask for up front. So I know I just saw Member Vandergeest kind of smirking to that. So I certainly, as from a staff point of view, would never encourage that because it is a difficult position then for staff in the committee.
Through the chair to the property owners. I might have missed it when you spoke. When did you purchase the property? And how long have you used it in its current state? How many years?
We purchased the property. We closed on the property in August of 2023. And so just over a year.
Thank you.
So I don't, go ahead, Member Bossy.
As a committee, can we, is the 8.66 meters a yes or no, or can we agree to something else?
Through the chair, the committee could choose to revise the application. It would be the recommendation of staff that the setbacks should be justified as to what the maximum extent possible is in order for the establishment of a VPZ on the property.
I just I would support a deferral this evening based on what I'd said earlier. I think there's uncertainty with the future. I do understand the phased approach. I have, like Miss Mandeville had said, I've seen plenty of those in a lot of years, and that's not being very truthful and puts the committee in a vulnerable position with that approach. And it's not a favored approach. But like I mentioned before, I do see it both sides. And if I were to vote on the application this evening before us, I would be voting no. That's why I'm in support of a deferral. But I do understand both sides.
Member Bossy.
I just don't know what a deferral would do. For one, that's all I we need to give them an answer, yes or no.
I think a deferral allows to the applicant and or their agent to look at the applicable new planning documentation or transition plans and look to see if this development or redevelopment of this property fits in with those plans. You know, obviously the township has their official plan, our new official plan coming out, and we'll probably see a lot of those provincial policy things within that official plan, but the deferral allows that to happen because there's a level of uncertainty coming in October.
And I think in addition to that, if we did do a deferral, it actually give the applicant time to provide that further justification that the staff want for the zone, for the environmental zone, whether it's breakdown of more information or clarification to provide more accurate of why they can't move it. Or
I also echo your thoughts. I also work in a very black and white industry, but I can see both sides of this. I also do live on the water, so I understand that aspect as well. I believe from what your agent had kind of highlighted that the changes are coming and that may affect your particular application as well. So I would also be in support of a deferral to a later date. It also seems like it wouldn't necessarily delay your construction at this standpoint, with you likely not being able to get concrete in the ground before winter at this point, getting building permits and such. So I would be in support of that if that's the motion that we would like to bring forward and vote on. I think I could get behind that as well. And if that does not pass, then we will have further discussions on what we vote on at that point. But I think I would be supportive of a deferral at this point. To my understanding, we have to have reason for deferral. So I think, as we've all discussed, the upcoming change in policy is one. It was highlighted by both staff and the applicant's agent. So I think that's a good reason, in my opinion, to be deferring.
Or future justification on why there's growth within 30 meter BPZ. Just either or.
Staff have drafted a rough motion for the committee. If you would like to see it, we can work it on screen.
Is that, I guess, through you to the planning department, is that justification enough? I know we've passed a lot of those in the past, right? I just, you know, I'm okay with that, but if we want, just want to make sure that that is allowable.
Through the chair, there is a recording of this meeting available, so staff can always refer to that. Keeping it like this does have it be broad enough that the information can be captured from today's discussion in the motion.
Hearing that, do we have a mover and a seconder? So moved by Member Vandergeest, seconded by Member Hawkins, that staff report D24-035 be received, and further that minor variance application A1524 be deferred pending additional information, and further that application be brought forward at the request of the applicant within 12 months or the file will be closed. We can get a vote. We are carried. We will move on to the next application. Sorry, the hearing for this application is now closed. You are more than free to stay for the remaining of the meeting or leave as the committee moves on to the next application. The next application we have is application for minor variance A18-24. Would township staff briefly introduce the application and report on any written response to the notice circulated?
Thank you, Chair. The next application this evening is minor variance application A1824, MacDonald, at the lands known municipally as 12726 County Road 16. Here we have a key map of the subject property. It is located just outside of the settlement area of Fesserton, located in between County Road 16 and Highway 400. The applicant is proposing the construction of a detached one-story private garage in the same general area as the existing garage. The minor variances are for an increased maximum size of 140 square meters and an increased maximum building height of 5.5 meters. For the committee's information, the lands are accessed via a right-of-way over 12730 County Road 16, which is the property between this one and County Road 16. Here we have a site plan of the site. The proposed garage is going here with the red. That is the location of the existing detached garage as well. And this driveway here is the right-of-way in favor of the property. Just an elevation drawing so you can get a sense of the garage that is proposed. Couple site photos. The one on the left is of the existing garage. And the second photo is taken from the deck of the dwelling, which is sort of located a little bit further up the hill and beside the garage. And you can see the existing garage located down here. As discussed within the staff report, the garage would remain incidental and subordinate to the principal dwelling. Staff do concur with the professional planning opinion presented by the applicant's agent in their PJR as it relates to the PPS, the growth plan, and the 4 tests. The building division did comment that there is no objection to the application. There was a couple storage or shipping containers observed on site. Those uses are permitted within the rural zone applied to these lands. Depending on the size of those buildings and if they're going to remain on the lands, they may or may not require a building permit. A condition is recommended to just address that to ensure that that is looked at should the committee choose to approve the application. The clerk's office, public works, and the fire and emergency services departments had no objections or comments to the application. And for those reasons, staff are recommending approval of the application this evening. Subject to these conditions, taxes being paid to date, the construction be in substantial compliance with plans submitted with the application, the existing vegetation be preserved and enhanced as much as possible, as well as the property owner obtaining those building permits if they're required for the shipping containers on the property. That concludes my presentation for this application. The applicant's agent from Morgan Planning is in attendance this evening and has a presentation for the committee as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Does the applicant or their agent have anything further to add to the application? Please unmute yourself, turn your camera on if you would like, and you can share your presentation with us if you would like as well.
Yeah, good evening, Chair. Good evening, committee members and members of the public that decided to attend the meeting. Just a quick thank you to Brad and the Township of Severn for that presentation. The presentation that you gave was very similar to mine, so I don't really see a point of going through it in completion. However, there's one thing I would like to touch on. If I could just share my screen. Can you guys all see that? Or now?
Yes, we can now.
Perfect. So as previously mentioned, the minor variance for height was 5.5 meters. And at the peak of the roof, it's obviously taller than 5.5 meters. 5.5 meters, about 18 foot 1 inch. And in the definition of building height for a gable roof, as seen in the plan, it's the average height between the eaves and the ridge, which, as seen in the presentation, would be less than 18 foot 1. So yeah, just to clarify that, in case anyone had any objections. But other than that, I think the township staff covered it very well in the presentation. And if there's any questions by the member of the public or members of the committee or the chair, I'd love to help out and answer them.
Thank you. Are there any persons participating virtually by Zoom who have either questions or who wish to speak in favor or opposition to the application? Please address your questions through me. The applicant may be asked to respond to each party. When commenting, please give your name and address for the minutes. Are there any persons in attendance in person who wish to either have questions or wish to speak in favor or in opposition to the application? Please address your questions through me. The applicant may be asked to respond to each party when commenting. Please give your name and address for the minutes. If there are no further questions or comments, I declare that the public portion of this application is closed. Do any members of the committee require further clarification or wish to provide comments on the application? We can get a motion. Motion COA 2024-053, moved by member Hiles, seconded by member Hawkins, that staff report D2436 be received, and further that minor variance application A1824 be approved, subject to the conditions included as attachment 5 to staff report D2436. We get a vote. We are carried. The hearing for this application is now closed. You're free to stay for the remainder of the meeting or leave as the committee moves on to the next application. All the applications are done. If we can get a motion for adjournment. So we have motion COA 2024-054, moved by member Vandergeest, seconded by member Bossy, that the Committee of Adjustment be adjourned at 7:42 p.m. Tuesday, September 17th, 2024. We can get a vote. We are carried. Thank you, everybody.